Welcome to Global Journalist. I'm Byron Scott, your host for this week's discussion of world news events by professionals whose job it is to report the facts and analyze the consequences. As we hope you've noticed, we've been on a short hiatus, but are happy to be back to help our worldwide audience understand the events of summer, or if you're someplace like Buenos Aires or Sydney, winter. And just in time, too. This past week, the Committee to Protect Journalists released a report so important that this whole show is devoted to the topic. The respected New York City-based media advocacy group, Committee to Protect Journalists, published its fourth annual Impunity Index, chronicling how nations are getting away with murder by failing to track the killers of dozens of journalists. This week's roster, or this year's shameful roster, includes 13 governments. Some, like Iraq and Afghanistan, are war zones. Others, like Mexico and Pakistan, have conflicts of other kinds. But there are also a couple of the world's largest economies, Brazil and India. Rounding out the list are Somalia, the Philippines, Sri Lanka, Colombia, Nepal, Russia, and Bangladesh. Maria Salazar-Ferro is coordinator of the CPJ Impunity Campaign and Journalist Assistance Program. She has worked as a journalist and researcher in both New York and her native Colombia. Welcome to the show, Maria.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
Also joining us is Awais Aslam Ali, Secretary General at the Pakistan Press Foundation and Chairman of the Pakistani Press International News Agency, coming to us from Karachi. Welcome. Welcome, Awais.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
The two of you launched the index at the International Freedom of Information Exchange conference in Beirut just a few days ago. Maria, I'd like you to begin by telling us how this embarrassing roster, or governmentally embarrassing roster, is calculated.
Well, as you said before, this is the fourth year that the CPJ has published its Impunity Index. It's a pretty methodical statistical tool that we use in which we count over the last decade all the countries where there have been more than 5 murders that have not been investigated or prosecuted. Then we use the number of murders as a percentage of the total population of the country to create an impunity rating. And that's, according to the rating, we rank the countries that make it into the list.
I think the ordinary public's image of the murder of a journalist would be perhaps friendly fire during a war, or being in the wrong place at the wrong time, and a certain amount of that occurs. But most of these victims are domestic journalists who have been working on domestic stories. Isn't that right?
Right. Actually, CPJ does track all deaths of journalists, and we track them in a different way. We do thorough and independent investigations into each death, and when we talk about a journalist murder, we are not talking about a journalist who's killed in crossfire or who's killed while on dangerous assignment, but a journalist who's targeted and killed in retaliation for his or her work. And yes, as you said, our research has shown that a vast majority, over 95% of journalists killed from 2001 until the end of 2010 were local reporters. Only 4% were foreign reporters.
Oh, wow. Over 95%.
In fact, indeed,
right.
Yeah.
And in overall numbers, how many are we talking about in the last decade?
Over 250.
Wow. It's an amazing number. Awais Aslam Ali, tell us how and why you got involved in this effort.
The Pakistan Press Foundation has been involved in monitoring attacks on media in Pakistan since the 1990s and has been a part of the International Freedom of Expression Exchange for many, many years. The situation in Pakistan took a dramatic turn for the worse after 2001, after September 11th. And according to CPJ's index, 14 journalists have been murdered in Pakistan since that time. In 2011, 2 more have been added. So there are 16 murders of journalists that have taken place, and none of them have been properly investigated, with the exception of Daniel Pearl, the Wall Street Journal reporter who was brutally murdered in Pakistan.
Right.
So these are for Pakistan. It's really very shameful that we have not been properly investigating and bringing to justice those who have been killed. And for every journalist killed, there are many more who are injured and who have been subjected to violence.
This is the classic kill the messenger philosophy that doesn't seem to work, but still seems to be something that that both criminal organizations and sometimes governmental or quasi-governmental agencies seem to resort to. Maria, I know that CPJ sends delegations to these governments where the rankings take place, and sometimes we can even see some evidence of action of having the public spotlight on them. Tell us, for example, the story in Russia, which is actually dropped from its previous ranking, still staying in the top 13.
Right. CPJ actually sent several delegations over the course of 2010 and 2011 to some of these countries. Russia, we currently have our Europe and Central Asia coordinator in Moscow following up on our impunity investigations. But we have had over the last 3 years a high-ranking delegation from CPJ visit Russia every fall. Last fall in September, we had had a delegation go and had a very encouraging response from the government. The year before, we had presented them with a report, a CPJ report into 19 killings in Russia. And when we went back a year later, the high-ranking Russian authorities, actually the highest-ranking investigative authorities in Russia, reported back to CPJ that with our own research, our impunity research, they had opened several cases. And additionally, since then, we have had good news. There was a conviction in a high-profile murder in I think in 2009. It was the killing of a young freelancer working for the Moscow-based Gazeta, Anastasia Buburova, she was killed along with a human rights activist. And this year we had a conviction in her case. It's very encouraging. At the same time, 2010 was the first year in a long time where there were no murders of journalists in Russia. So together, these two small steps, because they are small steps in the longer term fight against impunity, did lower Russia's ranking in our index. That said, there's still a lot to be done in Russia. Actually, while we were launching the report in Beirut, we got news that there was an arrest in another very iconic Novaya Gazeta murder of Anna Politkovskaya. The triggerman was arrested. But an arrest is a long way to the arrest of a triggerman is a long way to go before the masterminds are prosecuted, and that's what we're looking for.
That arrest was just at the end of May, yes.
Right.
Let me get back to Awais here for a second. Awais, Pakistan is still an extremely dangerous place to do the kind of journalism that we're talking about here. How does the Pakistan Press Foundation try to assist in this?
Pakistan Press Foundation tries to assist in a number of ways. First of all, I would like to say that the organizations of journalists, of editors, and publishers in Pakistan are very strong, and they are committed to press freedom, and they work very actively on issues related to press freedom. Pakistan Press Foundation highlights the issues in the international media organizations, so that any attack that takes place which is of significance, we report the matter to through IFX to other organizations and international media who would be interested. These international organizations then send protest notes and then work with the embassies of Pakistan and with send messages to the President, Prime Minister of Pakistan, so that they can take action. Pakistan Press Foundation. The other thing that we do is that journalists whose families are suffering and they may need financial assistance, we try and coordinate financial assistance to those families. CPJ, as you know, also has a journalist assistance fund, and they have also been very active and generous in supporting the families of journalists who have been killed or have been injured to an extent they cannot perform who cannot work anymore. So this is in some way that we also lobby the government within Pakistan. We also lobby outside Pakistan that the absolute impunity that is enjoyed by those who attack journalists and media organizations, we should do something to end this impunity.
Maria, let's ask you to talk a bit about the Journalist Assistance Program from CPJ's point of view.
Well, we're celebrating our 10th year. This is the 10th year that the program has been in place, and
the assistance program. Yes,
right, the assistance program. We do a variety of things, and we work globally to assist journalists who are in distress situations. It's really a long list of things we do. We do have financial assistance, as Awais was saying. We can assist journalists who need to flee because they're being threatened or attacked, who need to flee either their home within their country or who need to flee their country. We assist journalists in exile and journalists who need medical assistance because they've been attacked or due to injuries suffered in prison. And we also assist journalists who need legal assistance. And we do as well give financial assistance to families of journalists who are imprisoned or journalists who have been injured or killed. We also do other kinds of we give other kinds of support to journalists that aren't financial from the assistance perspective. We do advocate with international groups like the UN High Commissioner for Refugees. Sometimes we advocate with host countries in the case of journalists who are living outside their home, and we liaise with other press freedom groups, whether they're local like Awais' group or international groups that can also assist. In a nutshell, that's what we do.
Okay. Before we continue this discussion, I want to remind our audience that you can view or listen to this program anytime by downloading our podcast at globaljournalist.org. You'll also be interested in the articles, online discussions, and other features that are part of this website. You also can send us questions or comments care of Global Journalist Program at gmail.com, or simply look us up on Facebook. Maria, I don't think that the general public really realizes how many press advocacy organizations there are around the world. We know about the principal ones based here in the United States, CPJ, Freedom House, others, but IFEX brings them all together, and there was a decision made at the Beirut meeting to have a special day from now on about this question of governmental inaction, about murder of journalists, getting away with murder. Could you tell us about that decision?
Yes, it's a very exciting decision. Impunity in journalist killings, but also impunity in attacks and threats against journalists is one of the problems that plagues both local organizations who work with journalists and international organizations. And it is something that's very close to all of our hearts. So in Beirut, we decided to have an international day to end impunity in attacks against journalists, and that day will be November 23rd. Every year we will advocate to end impunity globally. The day it marks the most murderous attack on journalists ever, which is November 23rd, 2009, when 32 journalists and media workers were brutally killed in Maguindanao, in the southern island of Mindanao in the Philippines.
32 journalists all at once.
32 journalists. They were traveling in a convoy to report on local elections. They were pulled to the side of the road and were taken up a mountain and killed with altogether 58 people were killed. Among them, 32 were journalists and media workers. And the trial, the Maguindanao trial, is one of our main concerns. We're both Philippine organizations and international organizations are very committed to seeing this trial come to justice. But as of today, nothing major has happened. The trial has been stalled for years now. And last we heard was the Aquino government asked for patience in prosecution of the case, while there's some questions about whether some of the masterminds could be released.
We know what these organizations are doing. We're finding this out as we speak. But Maria and Ois, what can the general public do? How can they help?
I think the main thing, or the most important thing, is to be aware of what's going on and to make other people aware of what's going on. Of the immensity of attacks against journalists, against local journalists. To pass information on. We're on Facebook. We're online. You can just send around links to the kind of reports we're doing. You can also donate money to, for example, the CPG Journalist Assistance Program and support these journalists in distress situations. And I think you can push your government to push other governments to investigate killings and attacks.
Through our representatives and that sort of thing.
And indeed.
Right. Awais, what would you say to this subject? How can we help?
I think, first of all, it is because of the public pressure over the last decade or 2 decades that the level of press freedom in most of the world has increased tremendously. If you look 20 years ago, it was a different world as far as press freedom is concerned. If you look today, the public demands the right to know. And because of this public's right, you have a far greater level of discourse in the media than was ever thought possible even a decade or 2 ago. I think the public can get support, we will get support, But like the whole infrastructure of freedom of expression has been built over the last 20 years, now it is the responsibility of media groups, it is the responsibility of human rights organizations to push to end impunity. So far, it is paradoxical that as the level of press freedom has increased, as the level of freedom of expression has increased, so have attacks against journalists. And I think now the media and press organizations, human rights organizations, need to push that this is unacceptable. I'm very confident that if we have a sustained effort, as we did for press freedom, we should see some results. And even small successes, if anybody is brought to justice, is punished for attacking a journalist or attacking a media organization, I think the impact will be many-fold, where others who break the law and attack journalists will think twice, times before doing so. Right now, they know that there will be no price to pay if we attack journalists or media organizations. So I think it is a great step. We are on the right path by starting the Day of Impunity, by having the Impunity Index. Now we need to build the infrastructure, and I'm very confident that we will continue to get public support for societies where journalists and media can work in peace without the fear of violence or threat or intimidation.
And I think it's important to remind everyone that this list does not just include areas with extensive civil strife. It includes Brazil and India. It includes Mexico, where many Americans trade, many Americans travel, and this needs to be added to our view. Maria, we're coming down to the end of the show, but I wanted you to speak, you and Owais, a little bit about the kind of self-censorship that is, I suppose, the ultimate goal of these people who are killing journalists.
Well, I think that when you talk about impunity, you see that impunity as an indicator of freedom of expression is linked to other key indicators, mainly to self-censorship. And there are two countries that are worth highlighting in that link. There's Colombia, that has historically been one of the most murderous countries for the press in the world, and is improving. That said, there are questions about whether it is security that's improving or whether a rampant self-censorship among the Colombian press has, in turn, decreased the number of killings. And now we're seeing it in Mexico. In 2010, a 21-year-old photographer was killed in northern Ciudad Juarez. This is really close to the United States. He was killed in broad daylight in a parking lot. He is the second journalist to be killed in 2 years from the same paper, El Diario de Ciudad de Juárez. The day after his killing, the paper put out a statement, front page, saying, okay, organized crime, you won. We will no longer report on organized crime. We will no longer report on drug trafficking. We will just pretend this is not happening. And this is happening all over Mexico. And the only way that journalists and media houses have to protect themselves is by not reporting what's going on. And this, in turn, has an incredibly negative effect in the information that both the Mexican population is getting and that the U.S. is getting. A huge story that's not only crucial to Mexico, but that's also important to us in the U.S., is not being told.
And is this self-censorship a worry also in Pakistan, Owais?
Oh, absolutely. I think the journalists are subjected to violence because somebody wants reporting of that issue to stop. And as you increase the level of violence, so does the level of self-censorship increase. And the fear is that unless this impunity against attacks ends, we are going to lead to a situation where large, very important issues of our societies will not be reported. Like Maria said, we just pretend that these things are not happening. And that is why it is so important to provide a safe environment for journalists so that all issues which are of importance to our countries, to our societies, and to the world at large can be reported and discussed, and the plurality of views which is necessary, all views come to the fore so that the best decisions can be made in our countries and our societies that will benefit the common person.
Absolutely. And I think that it's the stories that don't get written that should worry us, and should worry us as the public. The stories that the murderers are preventing good journalists from reporting, and that's probably a big lesson of this show. I want to thank our guest, Maria Salazar-Ferro from this Committee to Protect Journalists, and Awais Islam Ali from the Pakistan Press Foundation and the Pakistani Press International News Agency for joining us in this discussion. Our lead producer for this show is Courtney Flatt. Our director is Travis McMillan, assisted by Andrew Orozco. We want to welcome him back to the show. Audio by Pat Akers. Our video producer is Tim Wall. Other Global Journalist producers include David Cawthon, Liz Lance, and Jessica Popovic. This is Byron Scott for Global Journalists, reminding you that you can download, view, or listen to this show, plus additional features, by going to globaljournalist.org. And Maria, if you would give us the website of CPJ.
It's www.cpj.org.
And Awais, if people want to be in touch with the Pakistan Press Foundation?
Yes, it's www.pakistanpressfoundation.org.
You can also get in touch with these organizations through our website at globaljournalist.org, an increasingly interesting and varied website that we hope our audiences pay attention to. As a last word, I want to say that a great deal of attention goes to criticism of journalists for their reporting fluff. But the dangerous stories, the difficult stories, are where the public needs its support. Good night for Global Journalist.